Good afternoon. My name is Richard. I work for Oracle, and in the coming hour, I'll be actually talking to you about how Oracle sees the future of IT. To be honest, I didn't come up with a title myself, because I personally actually really believe it's very hard to predict the future. Extremely hard, especially if you work in technology and IT and that kind of stuff. So it's not going to be the long-term future, but I will talk about some of the key things, key trends that we see happening. As I said, it is very hard to really predict the future. I mean, I personally see myself as a guy that loves technology. I have been in IT for more than 20 years, and in my private life I've enjoyed computers for more than 30 years, and I've always been trying to be advance of the game. I mean, 20 years ago I did full home automation in my house. I could say all the names of all my lights and they would automatically turn on and off, and that was 20 years ago. And nowadays, of course, this is becoming more and more normal and those kinds of things. So I always think I can somewhat predict the future, and typically most of my hobbies outside of my life at Oracle are also very much future technology driven. Just to give you a simple example to show you actually what keeps me up going outside of the life of Oracle is for instance, as my hobby, I make 3D scanners nowadays. I have a little child, and I don't know anyone here has children, but if you have your children, you don't want to. There's one thing you want to do all day long is take photos of them and that kind of stuff. They're always that cute and that kind of stuff. I didn't want to just take photos. I wanted to have a 3D scan of my son because I wanted to make a mini print of them. So I took 120 Raspberries with cameras, connected them up all to one network, and with a single shot, we can now 3D scan people, my son, and all those kinds of things. And I can actually do that with myself. So this is, for instance, a printout of me, scanned and then fully 3D printed. So I think really technology is really something cool, and I think in my personal life I really try to predict these things, and I've been working now on this hobby for quite a few while, and one of the real cool things that we can now do is we can take these scans and then we can take these scans into existing computer games. So I can actually now not just play Grand Theft Auto at home, I can play Grand Theft Auto at home as myself. And I have to say that's quite an awkward experience to do. You can get dressed up, you can put, especially for me, I can put hair on my head, I can give myself a mustache, I can do all kinds of things, and for instance, when I get into an accident, my whole face can get damaged and all those kinds of things. Now, why am I telling you this? Is because I'm trying to convince you that I'm good at predicting the future, because myself, I am living technology every single day. I live on the forefront of technology. But still, if you would have asked me, I don't know, 3 years ago, do you think that the world of taxis will change because of technology? I would have said no. I would never have predicted a company like an Uber coming alive and radically change the way and how I use taxis. I travel a lot, and for me, I love Uber. I mean, I can go to France, I can jump into a taxi, the guy will in somewhat half French English say, "Hi Richard," I don't need to speak to him, he will just drive me where I need to go, and I can get out. Compared to my previous experiences before the life of Uber, I had to try to convince the guy where he has to take me, which is a challenge in typically if you go to Paris or anything like that. So technology really has changed an industry that I absolutely did not predict of what's going on. So here I am trying to go give you a story about what the future is of IT. I said, well, that actually is going to be difficult. But one thing that I do know of is that today we are living in an age where there is massive digital disruption going on. There is this disruption going on that we are using technologies in such new ways that even people like myself that lives and breathes technology could never have predicted up front and those kinds of things. And there are many samples, not just an Uber, a Netflix radically changing the way how we watch TV. I mean, I always try to hang out along with children. I have 2 nieces, they're teenagers. I mean, I don't think they have in the last 2 years ever watched live television anymore. I don't even think they actually know what a normal TV is. They watch everything online, Netflix, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So what you see in the industry is that companies are coming alive and completely radically changing industries that we could have never predicted up front. And this digital motion is really changing everything of how we have to go to work with, from a technology perspective for a business and then even in our private life and that kind of stuff. And now you could imagine, it could be thinking, wow, Richard, great, but I don't work in the taxi world, or I don't work for a broadcasting company, I work for a healthcare company, I work in the banking industry. That's a traditional culture, nothing is going to change for me. Well, that I really want to challenge. I really do think that every single industry will have their Ubers and their Netflixes and their Amazons, and will have these radical different changes when someone comes along and uses technology to rethink that business need. And we need to think about that, especially if you are today working for a traditional company that has been in business for the last, I don't know, 50 years, doing whatever you have been doing. And you have to be aware that tomorrow an Uber could get up and might radicalize your industry. And this is something that we're already starting to see, right? In the industry, we are starting to see that the life of big corporations and the duration of that life is already radically shifting. I mean, 50 years ago, a company would have been there for a long time. Nowadays, companies come and go within 10, 20 years time span. And these were massive companies, and they go away again. And suddenly, the next big billion-dollar company can arise and that kind of stuff. So really do expect in every single industry that this digital disruption can absolutely actually happen. So how do we then, from a technology perspective, deal with this? What do we have to do to make sure that we don't get run over by the next Uber, but that we ourselves, even in traditional companies, can actually embrace these new concepts and make sure that we can come up with new business values by purely using actually technology? Well, to do that, we have to really change the way how we do business. We have to change the way and how we think from an IT perspective. And we are very far from where we need to be honest. I mean, every single day, I sit down with companies, I meet CIOs and CTOs and all that kind of stuff, and I check where they are. We are so not there yet from a technology perspective. We really have to do a lot of things. And I think one of the biggest things, there are actually two main things I think that we need to do, and I'll discuss those two things with you today. But the very first big thing that we have to do is we have to make sure that we transform our IT, the IT that we deliver in our companies, that they really become extremely easily consumable for our users. Now, that sounds maybe fancy or whatsoever, but what's that really mean? Well, I mean, today, IT is nowhere near consumable, right? I mean, I always give the simple example that if I, for instance, for my hobby project, I want to tomorrow start selling t-shirts, I can instantly do that. I can go online and find some way to sell online t-shirts, get full shopping chart, credit card payment, the whole shebang. I can hire someone in 5 minutes that designs it for me. I could have my hobby project up and running within less than a day. I'm confident of that. Now, if I want to go for my existing company and start a t-shirt shop, how long would that take? In my professional environment, where I have people that are paid, professional IT people that are paid to make sure that we can use technology, I wouldn't even know where to start before I could start selling t-shirts. Probably my best guess is going to take me 6 months, if not longer. So it's insane to think about it. In my consumer world, in my private life, I actually get a better IT service nowadays than I get in my professional life, in my business life. So one of the biggest transformations that we have to make from an IT perspective is we have to make sure that IT becomes consumable. And we do that by, first of all, accepting the way that how we have to do IT. And I always compare, when we talk about IT and when we talk about this new hype of cloud, that we have to change our IT into a restaurant. And today, most IT departments, if you would consider those to be restaurants, are really funny restaurants. Because how does every IT department today work is that any idiot can walk in and say, hey, this is what I want to eat. And for instance, if I would be Dutch, I would come in with my Dutch recipes. Well, if I would walk in today in a Norwegian restaurant and say, hey, this is what I want to eat, my Dutch recipe, I'm probably not going to get my food served that same day. Because, well, they won't even have the Dutch ingredients in-house. They have to fly to the Netherlands to get the right ingredients and all that kind of stuff. So that's not how restaurants work. How do restaurants make sure that they can serve up food very quickly? Because they work with a menu. They have thought before someone walked into the door, what do people want to consume? And that's not how we work today in IT, right? In IT, we respond to every request. We did not up front think, hey, maybe somebody come into the door and says, hey, I need a database server or something like that. And nowadays, IT just go, oh, okay, let's go do that. And they pretend they have never done that before. One of the biggest changes we have to make is we have to become this IT restaurant. We have to embrace this concept that we have to start thinking before people walk in the door, what is it from a technology perspective that they want to consume? And how can I make those kind of things easily accessible for them? So that the moment that they walk in the door, I'm already done. I present them a menu. This is what you can consume. Here you go. Pick whatever you want. and I can deliver it within the same day. Now that sounds very easily, but we have to, of course, make sure that everyone can consume the kind of things that they want to consume from an IT perspective. So across the board, from just providing people infrastructure as a service, just the bare elements of compute, storage, and networking and those kind of things, to platform services, to software services, I need to make sure that I can deliver that. And here we really need to make sure that we're asking the right questions. We're asking, hey, what is it that you want to consume? Still, people today in organizations have this mindset saying, oh, I'll ask for a server, because they wanted to have a server. But guess what? Most people that asked for a server did not want to have a server. Right? I mean, you want to have a server because in the end you want to do something else with it. You want to run a web shop, or you want to do some kind of business intelligence or whatsoever. But because we were always so glued to machines and all that kind of thinking, technology thinking, people were just asking for the bare components. Now we need to ask, hey, really, what is it that you want to consume? And can I not give you just that, what it is, what you want to consume? And I will take care of all the underlying layers. So I'm not saying that we should only move to a model of SaaS, or we should only move to a model of PaaS or platform services or infrastructure, but I make sure that if we start this restaurant, that this restaurant can offer up all of these services, and then depending on which people come in, we can ask them the right questions and make sure that they consume the best thing. And the best question to ask for is to make sure is that they focus on adding business value. Right? Every time people walk in and they have to do something that is not part of their core business, they're wasting their time. If a developer tomorrow wants to develop a new application for your business, but he first has to spend 2 weeks to setting up the environment, we've wasted 2 weeks of our time. Why did we not just give them that development platform instantly ready to go so that they could just consume what they wanted? Now, besides that, this is the land of cloud and that kind of stuff, so that we can make these kind of things consumable. And often people, when they start talking about cloud computing, they don't talk about cloud computing, they talk about the cloud. As if the cloud exists. I don't think there is the cloud or something like that. But more importantly, what they typically always assume when you want to apply these kinds of models and you want to make things consumable, that it has to go in the cloud, it has to go somewhere else. But that's of course completely not the case. What really is about is to help drive this digital disruption, and cloud computing is a key element to drive that agenda of digital disruption, is that we can make sure that IT can be delivered as a service, but no matter where it sits. So this concept of running an IT restaurant can happen in the public cloud, where you can consume from other people's restaurants, but it can absolutely, of course, also happen in your own organization, in your own data center, a private cloud kind of environment. And the key thing here is just to think about, hey, what things do you want to make consumable to your users, and what things would you maybe consider on getting it from someone else's restaurant so that your users can consume it from them. And you have to embrace that. The land in the future will be a combination of all these kinds of elements. So I think this is one of the big trends that is going on for us to help actually support this motion of everyone going to this digital disruption concept, where we have to use technology to make sure that we can drive new businesses. And therefore that technology needs to become extremely accessible, and therefore we have to start running this kind of IT restaurant concept. Now that's one of the two shifts I think that we have to make in the industry, and I think today we're still very far from it, right? I mean, I always typically ask within any company I go to, how many things can you do self-service in your organization without just changing your password, for instance? That's typically done through self-service, but anything else. And most companies have very little self-service capability still in their organizations. Everything is just based on when someone asks for something, people start manually doing things. Nothing is automated. Nothing is delivered through self-service and that kind of stuff. So we still have a very long way to go to make sure that we can accomplish that. But the other big change is that we live now in a world that is completely software-driven, right? I mean, software is driving and running the world nowadays. And software makes companies like a Netflix and an Uber and that kind of stuff exist. That's their core business. It's not just something that facilitates their core business, it is their core business. And we see this more and more, that there will be more and more companies that actually have software driving their core business as a product, as the business value that they're delivering to their customers. Now, not all software are equal. I mean, there are different types of software. When I talk about software, there are different types of software that you have to consider. You have the software that keeps your customer records and all that kind of stuff. Your old legacy systems, your traditional systems. But then, of course, there is software that actually drives innovation and helps you with new business models and those kinds of things. And these two different types of software packages that you have in your organization should absolutely not be treated the same. They are completely two different kind of approaches that you have to take with them. Right? I mean, when you talk about your traditional software stack that you have in your organization, yes, it has to be redundant and reliable. You don't want to make too many changes to it all the time and that kind of stuff. But for new kinds of software that can help spin off new businesses and create more value for organization, you want to go fast. You want to take risk. You want to be able to very quickly go to market with those kinds of things. And that takes a very different approach. Also the way on actually where you're procuring those kinds of things. Right? I mean, if you think about it, the software that you will be using in the future to change your company from a business value perspective, will that be software that you will just be buying from someone else? Or will that be software that you have to write yourself? Well, not just me, but also Gartner is predicting that the majority of that kind of software is something you have to write yourself. And that, of course, makes sense. Because any software that you can buy, it also means that your competitor can buy that same software. So that software is never going to give you as a company a unique value to market. Anything that you need to have from a unique value to market, you have to come up with yourself. You have to write yourself. And for that layer of software, we have to take a different approach. We should not be stuck into the old landscape of IT where the IT department is seen as the slowdown factor for any kind of project that you want to do. Because they're going to ask too many questions, they're going to be too difficult, they're going to be too restricted, and it's going to massively slow down the speed of innovation. For this new stack of software, we have to adopt a new concept. And this new concept is about developing cloud-native applications. Applications that are designed to be fast and speedy to market, that are designed to elastically grow and shrink depending on if they're going to be successful or not, and that are designed from a business organizational perspective that they can be very easily deployed out. Now, this is how the new companies are doing it. I mean, this concept of these native cloud applications is actually invented, as per se, by the Netflixes, the Ubers, the Amazons, and those kind of companies that have very rapidly gone to market with these new kinds of services. But we can apply those kind of same concepts ourselves as well in our own companies. But that has some challenges with it. For us to adopt this native cloud kind of applications, there are some things we have to change in our company, in our organizations. And one of the biggest changes, probably one of the hardest changes, is actually from an organizational perspective. From an organizational perspective, we have to really revisit on how we look at developing these kinds of applications. I mean, traditionally today, it's really funny, if you look at most applications that you probably run in your own company, especially the ones that you develop yourself, those applications are directly a mirror of how your organization are structured. Right? Most companies have, within IT, they have two big departments. They have the operational people, and they have the development kind of departments. And within the operational people, they have the people responsible for the hardware, the infrastructure, and you have the DBAs and those kinds of people. And in the developer world, you have the actual people that make the applications, the code, and you have the UI people. And this is typically how applications today are structured. They are structured in these layers that you have for each application. You have these teams that take care of the hardware. You have a team that takes care of the database. You have the team that takes care of the app. You have a team that takes care of the UI. To work with this is super slow and super unflexible because any change that you want to make, it has to go through all those organizational layers. If the UI guy thinks, hey, I want to add a field to my simple application, he would have to go to the developer guy. The developer guy has to go to the DBA, hey, I want to have that field in my thing. That might grow the database. He has to go to the infrastructure guy, hey, I need more disk space. And here we are for a simple change, we're 6 months later again. Now, this does not work anymore. This model of making applications that reflect your organizational structure has to be thrown out of the window. We have to completely revisit the way and how we structure a team that develops functionality and wants to drive innovation within your company. And we do this by this new concept called microservices. With a microservice concept, what you want to do is you want to actually take a single project and build the entire team, and that team should be extremely small, to be able to deliver and facilitate that functionality. It needs to be a functionality that stands on its own, that is accessible, of course, through standard web services and those kinds of things, so it can interact with all kinds of other services out there. But it needs to be run and managed and owned completely by one single team, by one single small team, so that they can actually very quickly drive innovation and functionality through that kind of technology. And by doing that, you can really get some key benefits. Right? I mean, by not having this kind of old school way of segregating how an application functions based on your organizational infrastructure, but by actually setting a team completely responsible for it, you can very quickly drive that kind of innovation. If you compare a microservice to a legacy application, it is super fast. Right? I mean, if you want to have a change, you literally ask the person around across from your desk, say, hey, I need this change, and he will implement it from a database perspective, they will implement it from an infrastructure perspective, and same day before lunch, changes are happening. And only by adopting this new model, you can drive innovation. Now, I'm not saying that you should do this for all of your applications, right? I mean, this shouldn't have to happen for maybe your applications that keep the state of record within your organization, your old legacy kind of systems. But for anything that you want to use to drive new innovation, you have to adopt this model, because else you will always struggle driving new innovation within a very short time period. So this is something that we really have to do. Now, besides that, when we adopt this kind of concept of these microservices, we also have to think about how can these developers procure the technology that they need to actually do their development, right? How do they get their systems and all their components that they need? And here you really always have to ask, am I going to make things myself, or am I actually going to just use stuff that's out there? And you should really always, for every single component, ask that question yourself. And you should empower each team to be able to ask that question themselves, so that they can figure out, okay, this is something that does not make us unique, it already exists, let me just consume it from somewhere else. And that could be an internal cloud service, that could be an external cloud server whatsoever, it could be a complete SaaS application, it could be just a platform service whatsoever. But the more you come to the kind of values that drive your business from an innovation perspective, that's really, of course, where the uniqueness will sit and where they have to actually come up with these kind of things. And you have to enable these developers then to be able to make their own choices, to be able to say, hey, where are you going to procure your IT services from? Is that going to be from your own IT department? Or is that going to be maybe in the cloud, from an Oracle cloud or a Microsoft cloud or an Amazon cloud or whoever's cloud? You have to start enabling these people to make their own decisions and make sure that the IT department does not become the slowdown factor. Now, that's going to be difficult, right? I mean, from an organizational perspective, a lot of people would argue that this is bad. I mean, you have rogue IT, shadow IT, people are afraid of those kinds of things. But we have to embrace that if we want to start drive innovation to that market. But we have to do that within reason, right? I mean, when you start talking about application deployment and development, you have to do this within reason to say, okay, these kind of things I will give people utterly freedom with. How they develop their application, what frameworks they use for it, and that kind of stuff. I might just give them a few choices for. From an infrastructure perspective, I might give them some basic shapes, some basic operating systems that they can actually build from the building blocks perspective. And some things I want to govern even more, like things like security, those kinds of things. So you have to come up with a balanced method, but at the heart of it, where people are actually going to develop these new applications that will help you do the new things in your organization, you have to give them the freedom in the way and how they want to procure it, develop it, implement it, and those kinds of things. Because only then you can actually be successful. So we as Oracle, we want to actually help you do this. We as Oracle, we want to help you drive these two different concepts of making sure that IT can be delivered as a service to your users so that people can much easier consume, and drive this concept of that you actually work with these native cloud architectures in your own organization so that you can actually help become more innovative for your organization. Now, how do we do this? Well, we ourselves, of course, are a cloud provider. And we are not just a cloud provider where we, in our cloud, have an IT restaurant where you can come to and consume all kinds of services, from infrastructure to platform to software services. But we're also a technology company, and we can actually take this and implement exactly the same thing in your own organization as well. But the key thing is here is that what we want to do with this IT restaurant that we are making is that we can serve every user in your organization. From the developer to the infrastructure guy to the line of business users, we want to make sure that there are services out there from an IT perspective that allows them to do their job faster and better and that they can focus on driving innovation and those kinds of things. So one way we do that is with a very rich SaaS portfolio. I mean, Oracle actually has a very rich application portfolio, if not probably the richest application portfolio out of any public cloud. So if I'm a marketing person and I want to know what everyone on the internet, on Twitter and Facebook and that kind of stuff is saying about my company, I don't have to go to my own IT department and say, hey, can you start monitoring Facebook for me and create a database on what everybody's saying about us and all that kind of stuff. No, I can straight go to the Oracle Cloud and get data analytics from social media that anyone says about my company as a service. I don't have to set anything up. I just subscribe to it. I say how many marketing people I have that want to use that kind of data, and I instantly can be up and running. If I am an HR person and I want to make sure that I can better manage talent in my organization, the people that I'm acquiring and making sure that their careers are better progressed. Again, that's something we can directly offer up as a service. Those kinds of things you do not have to develop yourself. So we build a very rich portfolio from finance to procurement to logistics to all kinds of applications that you can come to the Oracle Cloud and just directly consume. But as I said, this is mainly for the kind of applications that probably will not make your company very unique compared to your competitors. These are the basic functionalities that you would need to do within your own organization. But besides that, you want to also add innovative new kinds of concepts. And likely you will not purchase that through a software as a service kind of model, because it's said that your competitors will be able to do that as well. So besides software as a service, in our cloud, we really focus a lot on platform as a service. And why we think platform as a service is so important, because it is one stack above this infrastructure as a service. We do provide infrastructure service. You can come to our cloud, you can just get dumb empty virtual machines from us where you can just install anything you want in it yourself and those kinds of things. But how much are we then really helping you? What we want to do is make sure that there's a lot of technology components ready for you to consume out of our cloud, so that developers that want to create the next business idea for your organization can use these existing building blocks and therefore, again, much faster develop the kind of functionality that they really needed. So we have a very rich portfolio of platform services. So if I'm a developer guy and I want to build a mobile application for my organization, and I want to make sure that, for instance, in that mobile application, I want to be storing structured data. I'm a police guy, and I want to make an app that I can give fines for people that do wrong parking or something like that. Now, first of all, I want to record on my mobile app and structured information. I want to record the GPS location, and the time and date, and the license plate, and those kinds of things. And I can directly take that data and through a web service push that into the Oracle Database Cloud Service, through a web service. As a developer, I don't have to do anything for that. I don't need to know the database. I can create a web service on the database, and instantly that is now accessible from my mobile application. Now, if I want to take a picture of the guy actually parking illegally, I can take that picture, and of course I want to store this picture as well. And here, again, we offer a storage cloud service, an object storage cloud service in our cloud, where you can just store those non-structured data directly, again, through a simple web service in our cloud, and you don't have to worry about it. Now, if I want to send that police guy things like push notifications when time for him to go to lunch or whatsoever, again, I don't need to go figure out how to do a push notification and that kind of stuff as a developer. No, I can go to the Oracle Mobile Cloud Service and directly consume those kinds of functionalities through a simple API that I can send push notifications to all my devices. So we build a very rich set of services. These are Lego pieces so that developers then can very quickly themselves come up with all these kinds of different solutions that they can actually build. And this is not just for developers, the platform services that we offer, but this is even for lines of business users and those kinds of things. We offer components for them as well to be able to better do their job and come up with new, better ideas. And this is really, as I said, where our focus sits on this platform as a service besides our application portfolio. Because what we want to do, as I said, is really want to reduce the cost and time it takes to introduce new technology into your organization. Now, let me take you an extremely simple example, but us being Oracle, we always, of course, start off with the database. Traditionally, every time you want a database in your organization, well, comparing that on-premise, for me to get a database, I have to go to my IT guy, ask for hardware. At some point, I get my hardware. I have to install my OS, put database in it. Sure, I might automate some of that using virtualization, giving people templates and that kind of stuff. But still, there will be a lot of manual work for me to do. With our platform services, we want to make sure that not just from a provisioning perspective, I can very easily provide this to users and very quickly do that without having too much technical knowledge as well. We take all the technology knowledge away because we have automated it. But we also want to make sure it's very easy to maintain and to consume. So all the later on tasks to run that database we have automated in our cloud. So if you want to patch your database, that doesn't mean you have to go to the command line and download all kinds of files and type in all kinds of commands. No, in our cloud portal, you can literally just click on one button and say, hey, go patch my database. And we will patch the database for you. If you want to back up this database, there's one button. You click on backup. If you want to make this database redundant, you want to have it configured with Oracle RAC so that it's clustered, that is one button. If you want to scale up your database or you scale up your middleware, one button. We can scale up the environment or scale down the environment. So what we have done is we've taken all these kind of intelligence and we have fully automated this in our cloud so it is easy for people to consume. And that is what we want to do with all our platform services, is that you can really focus on your job and not have to worry about all these kind of underlying things, and you can just consume that particular layer from the platform perspective. Now, depending on what kind of user you are in an organization, it has different benefits for you. If you're a developer, this gives you a lot of tools in your bag. There will be a lot of things that you now don't have to develop yourself because you can use all these rich backend mobile cloud services and that kind of stuff that we have in our cloud. It means you can get much easier get your environments provisioned to you. It means you can much easier make sure that the applications that you're building are elastic, that they can grow and shrink in size and those kinds of things. But not just for developers, as I said, is our cloud. We want to make sure that for all the different types of users, we can really provide cool functionality. So for architects and operators, we can make sure, of course, that infrastructure is very easily there, very easily manageable, and that they have control over it no matter where this infrastructure sits, on the private cloud, in the public cloud, and those kinds of things. For lines of business users, we build a platform service, lots of platform services they can directly consume. If I'm a business user and I want to do, for instance, business intelligence on a data set that I have, I just made an Excel sheet, I have a shitload of data inside of it, and I want to make pretty graphs and analyze that data. Now, sure, I can go to my own IT department and say, hey, I have this little Excel sheet here, can you help me? They're going to ask me millions of questions, it's going to be very difficult. Or I can go to the Oracle Cloud and consume the BI Cloud service. With the BI Cloud service, I can directly import my Excel sheet and directly get this cloud portal interface that has very rich tool set for me to analyze that data. And I can do this natively on my iPad, I can do this on the web browser and all that kind of stuff. So it's extremely easy for even a business user to develop. And they don't need to understand anything about a database and all that kind of stuff. We'll pick up that data, we'll stick it into our database, and we give you an extremely rich tool set, very easily to use, to actually consume and analyze that data and that kind of stuff. And we don't just do that for business intelligence. We do this from a document sharing perspective. If you want to create a website, for all those kinds of things, we have ready-to-use platform service in our cloud that people can actually very easily consume. And also, as I said, for business analysts, big data and those kinds of things, all those things are directly consumable out of our cloud as a service. Now, as I said, the key thing is for us to help drive innovation. But innovation typically borrows the existing knowledge and the technologies you already have in your own organization. It actually has to be connected still to your legacy systems and those kinds of things. And that's actually what we're doing, making sure with this platform service, that these platform services can take your existing traditional kind of applications, things that you can run as software as a service coming from the Oracle Cloud, but you can still extend that standard service to make it customizable, that you can still make your own innovation using those kinds of legacy systems. And that's how we can actually use our platform services as well, that they are, because they sit in the same cloud, they can very easily extend whatever base functionality we deliver from a software as a service perspective. So that's it from an Oracle Cloud perspective, in the form that we run our own IT restaurant. We want to make sure that we offer this very rich portfolio of applications, and we offer this very rich portfolio of platform services, these Lego pieces that people can use for their own projects to much quicker develop new kinds of concepts. Now, the last and final step that we do offer there is, of course, infrastructure as a service as well. If you do want to just get virtual machines and storage and network capacity and all that kind of stuff out of our cloud, we can provide you with that. But to be honest, there will be no real difference here between consuming a virtual machine out of an Oracle Cloud compared to out of an Amazon or a Microsoft Cloud and that kind of stuff, except for one, that this infrastructure platform sits directly next to the platform as a service and software as a service, so you can really combine all these services very easily together. And one thing we really very strongly believe about, if you want to be future-proof, and you want to be future ready, and you don't know where things will go in the future, is we want to make sure that when we talk about cloud, we talk about cloud computing. That means All these concepts that I talked about, making things easily consumable and making sure that you can support this new model of these microservices that you can much faster deploy your innovations on, are available both in the public cloud, but also available in your own data centers if you choose to. So everything that we are doing is for us just one strategy around cloud computing. And the Oracle Cloud is our restaurant where you can come to and consume from us. But we are still also a technology company that can take those exact same services and technologies and be able to make sure that you can deploy that in your own organization and still make sure it is accessible through self-service and all those kinds of things, so it is easy for people to consume. Now, to take even one step further with this, we actually have announced a few months back at Open World that we are even taking some step here in the middle. And we are coming out with the Oracle Public Cloud Machine. And this is actually a physical box that you can get in your own organization on a subscription basis. You're not buying anything from us. And this is our public cloud. It is literally like our public cloud. You can actually use the funds that you can buy in our public cloud on this box. It is the same UI, it's the same everything. It looks like our public cloud, and it is completely managed by Oracle as our public cloud. But it does sit in your own environment. So that if you do have, from your business perspective, regulations that you can't move data outside of your country, or you have to have data inside your own data center and those kinds of reasons, we still don't want to inhibit you that you cannot make use of these very easy to consume services. So therefore, we're also making sure that those services now can actually sit in your own data center, but it is still the Oracle public cloud, and it is run as such, but just for you to be able to consume in your own data center. So that's for us where this cloud journey and this adoption of this digital age is all about. It is about building a bridge, making sure that you can very easily choose between all these technologies, making sure that you can drive innovation by making IT easy to consume, and we don't want to create this one-way street towards just the public cloud where you will be locked in and those kinds of things. For us, it's all about this higher level purpose that we want to help you drive your digital agenda. That you can use technology to transform your tomorrow. Because that is in the end what we believe this big hype at this current moment is all about. It is not about the cloud. It's not even about cloud computing. It is about making sure that we can use technology in new ways that we could have never thought up with. And one thing you really have to embrace, and this is something I think a lot of IT people still have a hard time at embracing, is that most innovation will not come from us. Most innovation will not come from people in IT. Most innovation will come from our customers, our business users, and those kinds of things. So we really need to start opening up to them that they can start consuming technology services from us in an extremely easy way, so that we don't always have to be responsible ourselves to create the innovation, but that we will be able to support it and drive it with whoever comes up with the best next big idea. And that is, for us, our core strategy. That's where Oracle sees the future of IT, that this is the way and how we think IT should be run. Using cloud computing as a technology, as a framework, completely integrated on-premise and in the cloud with all these different types of services that you can make consumable for your users, so you can actually drive transformation in your own organization. No matter where you are right now, if you're already a very modern company and you're already massively adopting things like self-service and microservices and those kinds of things, or if you're still using very old traditional systems, we want to help you with transforming your business. So I hope I've given you food for thought about how we see how technology is changing and the future of IT is changing. And as I said, most of this is not just pure technology. It's not just that we're adopting new ways of making applications into containers and microservices and adopting public cloud services and using web service, those kinds of things. I think the biggest change that we have to make is organizationally and in our minds. We really have to look differently at ourselves, people that work in the technology, that we have to see it as our task, as our goal to make technology easily consumable for people. And if you think about it, today, in your current situation, wherever you are today in your professional career, how much of your time are you truly spending on doing that today? How much are you really spending today on making sure that others can drive innovation very easily by the technology that you are providing them? And often I think if we honestly look ourselves into the mirror, we're very far from that today. So that, I think, really is the biggest change we have to make. We have to start becoming proactive. We have to start think like product managers, like a chef cook in a good restaurant, about what food people want to consume, so that they can come up with new best things for the organization you work for. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the party tonight. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Any questions? No questions? Okay, thank you very much.